Mike Florio, NFL on NBC. Is Derek Carr good enough to take the Saints to the playoffs? Florio, I believe, is pretty anti-Carr. I think we've done a video before with him talking about a Carr, and I believe that's exactly how it went. I think he was pretty staunch in his anti-Carr belief. We're certainly no Carr apologist here. We call it how we see it. It is what it is. So I'm interested to see his take and kind of hear what he has to say about the situation in New Orleans.
Last night, the Saints showed, and I said this going into the game, and I still believe it. They're just good enough to barely miss the playoffs, and I think that's what's going to happen. They're going to barely miss the playoffs, and I don't know, can they go to Tampa next week and beat the Buccaneers?
That's the question, right? Like, that's tough to go to Tampa with a Tampa team that's not playing that bad, a Tampa team that's already beat us, a Tampa team that really kind of destroyed us in the Superdome, and then turn around, beat the Falcons in the Superdome. That, you know, with a team that's as inconsistent as the Saints, you'd like to think maybe they can catch lightning in a bottle. Maybe the roster's good enough to win those games. You know, Tampa's no world beaters, and the Falcons are no world beaters either. So someone's got to win the NFC South, so might as well be the Saints, is kind of my thought of the whole thing. Would it shock me if they went to Tampa and lost? No. Would it shock me if Atlanta beat them? No. But it wouldn't shock me if the Saints won those games either. So it's kind of a coin toss in the NFC South. I think it's basically a three-way coin toss. I'll take our chances. I still think the Saints get it done.
Buccaneers already lost to the Buccaneers at home. That's been a great rivalry in recent years. The Tom Brady years, the Buccaneers always had, or the Saints, always had Tom Brady's number when he was playing for the Buccaneers. But what I saw last night was a team that got blown off the field. It was 30-7. And then I think the Saints, this was my assessment while watching the game. And I love Monday night and Thursday night because those are the 2 nights a week that I can watch the whole game as it's happening live, not after the fact.
Everybody has had the same reaction to the game. Saints were completely dominated. 30-22 is the falsest, like, to think it was a one-possession game. It was not, okay? Yeah, it was a masterclass from the Rams. The Saints looked like they were not only not to the Rams level, but it looked like the Saints shouldn't have even been on the field. It was as embarrassing of a loss as you can have, because it almost looked like, I don't know. I mean, it looked like the Rams. It looked like it's like an older brother or something, just dominating and imposing their will, taking mercy at times. It was definitely a discouraging loss for the Saints.
And develop a sense, just that what's really going on here. And I feel like once it was 30-7, the Saints went into let's make the final score not look as bad as it was mode. Because the drive that culminated in the touchdown that cut it to 30-14, they were kind of plodding, dinking and dunking, no real sense of urgency, like, hey, this is just the first of 3 scores we need to catch them. I never got that sense that this was about winning the game or forcing overtime. This is about...
See, I mean, I think this is kind of a take of someone who doesn't watch the Saints a lot, is that's just kind of their offense. You know, that's just kind of what they do. That's how they do things. When it was 30-7, or when it was not that far, when it was like, when we were down 2 scores and we were just kind of running the football and kind of just doing a normal drive, you know, me and a group that was watching the game and texting and kind of breaking it all down, we were saying like, hey guys, might want to have a little urgency here, might want to show a little something, might want to change it up a little bit. We can't just have like, okay, we're down whatever 23-7, let's run Jamal Williams on first down for 2 yards. Like, we might need to get to the up tempo stuff pretty quick. So that's just kind of how the Saints operate. I don't think it's indicative of how they felt or anything like that. It's just how they call plays, how they run the offense.
Let's go down here and get a touchdown because 30-7 looks pretty bad. Let's make it 30-14. And then the block punt, and they started the dink and dunk again until the long touchdown pass that made it 30-22. That changed the vibe, and it woke the Rams up, and it put them in a spot where they maybe had to sweat more than they thought they were going to. I mean, there was a point early in the fourth quarter where Sean McVay was very celebratory on the sidelines.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, it's 30-7. And I mean, really, are the Saints going to come back from 30-7? They almost tripped their way into it. But, Shireen, I think that they really, when they were on that first drive that cut it to 30-14, That to me just felt like save face. Score a touchdown, 30-14 looks so much better than 30-7. And 30-22, for somebody who just does a quick drive-by of the scores, they're going to think, hey, you know.
I don't know, man. I just don't buy this. Like, who is it saving face for? Like, Allen's gone. Allen's coaching for his job. I don't think Allen's sitting there thinking, like, yeah, let's just save face. Let's just, same with Carr. Like, I don't think they're thinking about the person who's just kind of looking at the box score. I think everyone's assuming the eyes are on this game. This is the primetime game. There's tens of millions of people watching this game. I don't think in the moment any of those players are thinking, let's make the box score look better for people who aren't watching. And I think they're probably embarrassed, and I think they're trying to score. They're trying to establish something. They're trying to do I think the Saints thought they could win the game down 30-7? Probably not. But they're still out there. I still think the players want to make it respectable. They want to, they don't want to get embarrassed. I think that's more of the answer versus they wanted to cover up their whoopsie poopsies.
Saints were competitive, but they weren't.
No, they were not. No, they weren't.
Scored a couple of touchdowns late when the game was out of hand, and they made the final score not look as bad as it would have. And
the exact same as Minnesota. The exact same as Detroit. Like, this is how it's been. And even the games that weren't out of hand, that weren't 30-7 or 21-0 in the first 5 minutes or whatever, even games like Houston, where it's like the Saints just can't do anything. They're just like struggling to exist in the game. And then at the very end, it's like, whoa, they actually kind of had a shot there. It's happened time and time and time again with the Saints. That has been same, like Green Bay, Minnesota, Houston, Detroit, this game. It's all even Jacksonville. Even Jacksonville. Like, they're all right there. It's all right at the end. Somehow it seems to kind of come together.
I feel like that's what they wanted to do once it was 30-7.
Well, I think we have enough evidence now that Derek Carr is what he's shown. He's done it with two teams. He's just good enough to.
And what is that?
As you said,
what is he?
Stay out of the playoffs. He's just good enough to keep you out of the playoffs, to keep you competitive, to keep you out of the playoffs. If he gets into the playoffs, which he's done it twice and only got to play in one playoff game, he's not going to win the playoff game. So he's just.
From what I've seen,
not good enough.
What I've seen with Carr, and the jury is still out on Carr for me. You can't. I just feel so negatively about these coaches. I feel so negatively about Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael that it's hard for me to say, "Yep, this is Derek Carr. This is it. This is the whole thing." Do I think Derek Carr can be Matt Stafford? No. I don't think Derek Carr is as good as Matt Stafford. I don't think he can have the same effect that Stafford had when he went to LA. I don't think that's the case. Do I think Derek Carr is that much further behind like Ryan Tannehill when he was with the Titans, like when the Titans were good and Tannehill was there? Do I think Derek Carr is that much further behind like a Kirk Cousins even? Not really. Not really. I think physically he can probably do some things. He needs the right coach. He needs the right system. He needs to operate in that system. But yeah, I don't think he's a Super Bowl kind of guy. He's not a franchise changing kind of guy. The good news for the Saints is that that's not really what we want him to be. We wanted him. He was a Hail Mary. He was, let's see if he can be really good for this window of 3 to 4 years. And Dennis Allen, I'm sure, was thinking, let's see if he can save my job. He can't. So we're not tied to this guy for 10 years. We're not tied to this guy for 5 years or 6 years or 7 years. More than likely, it's going to be 2 years with Derek Carr. And we're already 90% through the first one. More than likely, we're going to have Derek Carr next year. He'll be our quarterback. And we'll get a lot more of the same unless we get a absolute offensive genius. So, he was a risky bridge quarterback kind of experiment, and it didn't work. That's pretty much what Derek Carr is right now in this vacuum. Now, will he be if we bring in the right coaches and all that stuff, and could he increase his value? Could he increase his competency? Yeah, sure. I'm sure he can, but I don't think he can transcend to the level that Stafford did when he went to the Rams, the level that some players do when they get that fresh start, or they get the big contract or whatever. So that's kind of where I'm at with Carr. I mean, and that's nothing. I don't feel like, and I know a lot of people in the comments are going to really disagree with that. A lot of people really like Derek Carr. I want Derek Carr to be successful. And I don't think me saying that is me disparaging Carr. I think it's me saying, like, yep, he hasn't been great this year. I think Carr would agree to that. The Saints have absolutely underperformed. Is it all Carr's fault? No. It's a lot of the coaches, a lot of the rest of the players. Carr's definitely been part of it. He has not been great. Whatever. But I'm willing to give him a second chance. I'm willing to give him a second season with the right coaching staff and see what happens. No one wants Derek Carr to succeed more than me. I mean, I couldn't believe some of the stuff I've read over the last 15, 16 weeks of people saying that I'm anti-Carr. I picked the Saints to be like a 1 or a 2 seed. I predicted the Saints were going to win like 12 games. I said, find me 5 losses. I put a tremendous amount of money on Derek Carr to win more than 9.5 games in the regular season. I put a tremendous amount of money on the Saints to beat the Minnesota Vikings. I've believed in Derek Carr the whole step of the way. And I'll believe in him next year. But I'm also a realist. I'm also watching these games. I'm also sitting here covering this team. I'm in the Superdome, and it's impossible for me to watch what I've watched this season and be like, yeah, I think this guy's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. That would be disingenuous if I said that to all of you. That would sound ridiculous.
I mean, I think there's enough evidence of that he's not good enough to get you in the playoffs and have a chance. It was obvious who the better quarterback was. And when you start looking at the divisions, Mike, and the division leaders, aside from the NFC South, the AFC South, I think there'd be a little argument there. But aside from that division, if you look at the other divisions, the quarterback, the best quarterback on the team is going to win that division more than likely.
I've said that for years. Done the experiment there where more than likely, if you just rank the quarterbacks in the division, that's probably how the standings are going to play out. Pretty damn close. Pretty close is how this is going to work out. And that was a big reason why I thought the Saints would be so good this year. It was because I thought Derek Carr would be the best quarterback in the game for a majority of the games we played. Certainly in the division. I certainly thought he'd be better than Bryce Young, Baker Mayfield, and Desmond Ridder. And it's just, at times it hasn't been that, and yeah, the offensive line's been bad. Yeah, the running game has been bad, no doubt, all that. The defense hasn't been great. Like, yes, there are way bigger problems with the Saints than the quarterback. To me, Carr is a non-issue. It's already in stone. We already signed him. The deal is already on the table. Having the conversation of, should Derek Carr be the starting quarterback next year? Should Derek Carr be on the Saints? Should Derek Carr this? That's wasted breath at this point. It is what it is. The conversation should be, who's the next head coach? Who's the next offensive coordinator? Who's the next defensive coordinator? What's their plan? What's their vision? Who are we going to draft? What are they going to do in the next couple of years? What's the conversation for the Saints right now needs to be, what's the 5-year plan? What's the outlook for the next 5 years? It should not be a Derek Carr insulated answer. It shouldn't be, it's like, the same with Groupie, the same with Headley, the same with our line, the same with our secondary. It's not this one player or this one player. It's a collective issue with the team. It is a collective problem. It's from the tippy top down. Derek Carr is Trevor Siemian. Derek Carr is Andy Dalton. Derek Carr is Ian Book. It's all been the same. Derek Carr is Jameis Winston. They're all the same. Is it their fault the Saints aren't succeeding? Was it Andy Dalton's fault? Was it Trevor Siemian's fault? Was it Ian Book's fault? Was it Jameis Winston's fault? No, they're part of a bigger problem. The bigger problem is the team isn't good enough. The bigger problem is the coaches are good enough. The staff isn't good enough. The scouting department isn't good enough. The players being brought in aren't good enough. They're not being developed properly. It's a whole systematic issue. And that's totally fine and totally understandable when you lose Sean Payton. and Drew Brees in the matter of 16 months? Totally understandable. The Rams, if Matt Stafford leaves and Sean McVay leaves and Raheem Morris leaves and they bring in a horrible offensive coordinator and a horrible defensive coordinator and a horrible head coach, and Carson Wentz is forced to start, are we going to be sitting here saying, is it Carson Wentz's fault? Maybe it's that we've lost the whole backbone of this franchise. Maybe it's that we lost the entire foundation of the Saints and who the Saints have been. Maybe it's that we lost all of that and we replaced it with nothing. Absolutely nothing. So Carr definitely is part of the issue, just like a lot of other players and a lot of other pieces are, but it's not as simple as, is Derek Carr good enough to take the Saints to the playoffs? It's not as simple as, is Derek Carr good enough to elevate the Saints to the Super Bowl, to contend for the NFC? That's just not where the Saints are right now. It's a transitionary franchise who is making a ton of changes, and it's going to take a ton of changes for this franchise to really compete.
So, the NFC East has two really good quarterbacks. You can debate whether Dak Prescott's playing better than Jalen Hurts this year, but you can debate which is the better quarterback. I'll take that. But the best quarterbacks usually win in this league, period, end of story. So my point is, I don't know that you can win. The Saints can win with Derek Carr as their quarterback. The Raiders finally figured that out and said, we've got to move on. Now the Saints have this guy for at least one more year. Now they don't have to play him. They have Jameis Winston sitting over there, but he's not good enough. I think that's where we are. He's not good enough to take them where they want to go.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
This is the layers and levels of quarterback competence below franchise quarterbacks. There are guys who we've seen it, and at a certain point, you just are who you are, and there's no shame in being a quarterback who is good enough to get you into the fringes of playoff contention every year. And look,
that's the thing. Like, that's why I don't think it's disparaging to Carr. There can only be so many elite quarterbacks. There can only be so many top 10 quarterbacks, right? If you're the 14th best quarterback in the NFL and you are average and you have certain moments where you can be good, be competent, and you can maybe even get your team to the fringe levels of the playoffs and maybe even win a playoff game, or if the right circumstances happen, can win the division. Like, if that kind of stuff happens, okay, that's just who some quarterbacks are. Some quarterbacks can elevate their franchises, like the Joe Burrows and the Patrick Mahomes and players like that, CJ Stroud, even what he's been doing in Houston. And some players are, even below average, and they're dragging their team down. I don't think Carr is dragging the Saints down, but he's obviously not a top 8, top 5 kind of generational guy. He's not. So I would put Carr in kind of the same basket as probably like the Baker Mayfields of the world, where are they good enough, long term, to elevate whatever? Probably not. Can they win you games? Sure. Could they maybe even get you into the playoffs? Sure. Sure, no problem. Yeah, all right. But that's not a bad that's not a bad thing. That's not even. I don't think it's a negative take on Carr. I think if you go the other way, and if you're saying no, Carr is a top 6 guy, Carr is a top 8 guy, Carr can get you to the playoffs or to the Super Bowl, Carr can do all this, he can, I think then you're being disingenuous to Carr. And I think then you are putting way too much on Carr that he just can't do. You're putting way too much on him that, he's just not that player. You're putting expectations on Carr. And maybe that was my mistake. I think that was my mistake, was that I put all this pressure on Carr of, he can be a top 8 quarterback in this league. He can be an MVP level player. He can be that. So I expected him to come in, maybe get to that level. And if he did get to that level, I was thinking he'll be so much better than, the Josh Dobbses of the world, and the Baker Mayfields of the world, and the Desmond Ritters of the world. We'll just breeze through the schedule. And looking back, that was probably unfair. It was probably unfair of me to expect that of Carr. What I should have said was, Carr can come in. He can be kind of Andy Dalton-esque. He could probably have his moments. Carr, we all know that he's got a lot of fourth quarter comebacks. Like, he can certainly have his moments. Can he do it sustained? Is it a sustained kind of thing? Probably not. So if I would have looked at it that way, then I would have probably had the Saints, instead of a 12-13 win team, I probably would have had them closer to like a 10-11 win team. The schedule was still easy enough, and 10-11, that I would have been okay with that. Obviously, we underperformed, and that's why we're sitting here staring at a possible 9-win season.
His credit, the Raiders gave the Bengals everything they could handle a couple of years ago in the wild card round. We didn't know at the time the Bengals were headed to the Super Bowl. The Bengals didn't know they were headed to the Super Bowl. But the Raiders gave them a game, and there was that weird call with the phantom whistle in the first half that kind of undermined things and made you think maybe the Raiders got screwed a little bit. It was all the way down to a final drive where they were trying to force overtime. But Derek Carr didn't deliver. That's the thing. You get opportunities. They're pass-fail. The opportunities come along not very often. What do you do with them? The great quarterbacks cash them in. The guys who aren't among the great quarterbacks cash them out. And that's what Derek Carr is. He is who he is. Yeah. He's not going to magically get better, I don't think. Now, look, I was saying the same things about Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, that part I don't agree with. I think Derek Carr can get better with the right coaches. Do I think that better is MVP level? Do I think that better is, lead the league in passing or, whatever, like drag a team to the Super Bowl? No. But I don't think this is like who Derek Carr is. Same as I don't think this is who Alvin Kamara is. I don't think this is who Chris Olave is. I don't think this is who these players are. I don't think this is who Taysom Hill is. This is a product of a broken franchise with a horrible staff. That's just it. So I disagree with the notion that what we've seen this season is Derek Carr. That is the encapsulation of him. I think this is a bit lower than what his production level probably should be. And again, I'm willing to see what he can do with a competent offensive coordinator, a competent head coach. That's basically where I'm at with him.
And the last we saw of Cousins in a full game this year, he was the best he'd ever been. And I think there's plausible hope that if he's back with the Vikings next year, he'll play that well wire to wire, although he will be 36, I believe, in August. Carr is who he is. And Shireen, they made a commitment to him. And I don't know who else they were competing with. The whole thing last year when the Raiders decided they wanted to cut him or trade him, or at least work out a deal to trade him before another $40 million became fully guaranteed in February, right after the Super Bowl. And I knew at the time, you're not going to pull this off. He's got no reason to comply, no reason to cooperate. Just cut me. And they eventually cut him. He had a head start on free agency. I think the Jets would have been interested in him if they weren't able to get Aaron Rodgers. I know the Jets would have been interested in him if they weren't able to get Aaron Rodgers. The Saints, I don't know who else was in that mix, but the Saints gave him a contract that contains $30 million fully guaranteed next year. And as of March of next year, there's a $10 million roster bonus payable in 2025 that becomes fully guaranteed in just a few months. $40 million still to be paid. The same number, coincidentally or ironically or both or neither. $40 million that the Saints aren't getting away from because
I'm not going to, I don't like to get too deep into the cap, and I don't like to get too deep into contracts because I think they're a bit fugazi. I think, the NFL, you pay people, contracts come and go, people retire, people get traded, people get cut, people sign 10-year contracts and they get fired the next year. What happens to the money? I don't know. Who knows? Like Cliff Kingsbury got paid whatever. He signed a 10-year contract. 8 months later, he was fired by the Cardinals. Where's the money? Who knows? How's it affecting the Cardinals? I'll let somebody else figure that out. Same with the Saints. Like in baseball, Bobby Bonilla hasn't played organized baseball in 20 years, and he still gets paid $1 million every year. King Griffey Jr. is getting paid $3.2 million next year by the Reds. He hasn't played in over a decade. Meanwhile, Shohei Ohtani is somehow only making $2 million. He's deferred $700 million for the next 10 years. Like all that stuff is monopoly money. I don't know. So I'm not going to get too deep into Carr's contract. As far as I know, simple terms, he has to be here next year. Then the Saints will move on from him.
Because they're already on the hook for 30. They're all in with Derek Carr for next year. Now, they don't have to play him, but they do have to pay him.
Yeah.
And no one's trading for him.
No.
Just like last year. I mean, think about it. If all of a sudden the Saints would make it known to the NFL at large that Derek Carr is available, who would be rushing to do that?
Nobody.
After what we've seen from Derek Carr.
Same as last year.
His career. And, look, I mean, it's...
I would argue Carr's trade value right now is probably worse than it was last year. And it was low last year. So if he wasn't getting traded for last year, not getting traded this year. The Jets comparison is a good example because if Carr would have went to the Jets, not the Saints, do I think the Jets would have been better? Yeah. He's better than Zach Wilson. Do I think the Jets would have been a Super Bowl contender? No. Do I think they would have been an AFC title contender? No. Do I think they maybe could have backed into the playoffs? Yeah. Exactly like the Saints. If we didn't have Derek Carr, would we be worse? Maybe. Can Derek Carr get us to the Super Bowl? No. Could he get us in the fringe playoff situation? Yeah, that's what he's done. That's how I look at Carr. Now, is that worth $150 million? Is that worth $40 million over the course of a year, whatever? No. Now, right now, no.
But we have to be honest in our assessment. We can't sugarcoat it. He is exactly where he is. Middle of the pack at best.
Yeah.
And there's no shame in that. Middle of the pack at best. And I don't know that there's some magic button that's going to be pressed on Derek Carr to get him to become better than he's been. Maybe there's some coach out there that can find a way to get through to him and get him to stand in the pocket longer and get him to not get rattled, as Bruce Irvin said. Not my words, Bruce Irvin's words. Rattled when you get around him. 10 years, 11 years into the league, I don't know how you change that.
I don't think you can change Carr. What I think good coaches and good systems and good schemes can do is it finds a way to mask the bad attributes and allows them to exist in a system where they're asked to do less, and what they're asked to do, they can do. That's what I think you can do with like a Derek Carr. You're not going to change who he is as a player. You're not going to change all those tendencies, but you can certainly change how those tendencies operate inside of a system. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for Carr to be efficient. I'm looking for Carr to be, in the system, run the system. I'm not expecting some quarterback guru to change who Derek Carr is as a quarterback. I'm more concerned with changing how the offense is. I'm more concerned with changing the overall plan, the overall system, the overall scheme, and then plugging in Carr and plugging in the players to succeed in that scheme.
Maybe if you have a good running game like the Bills did to the Cowboys, you can rush for 200 yards a game, and he's still going to have to make some plays. But maybe if you can build it around a really good running back and good offensive line and give him some time with a couple of good receivers, I don't know. But
isn't she answering her own question? Didn't Derek Carr have the leading running back in the NFL for parts of last year? And what happened? Like it has nothing to do with, and this is my whole point. It has nothing to do with a good running game or which wide receivers you have. Like he had Devontae Adams. He had, like I said, the leading rusher in the NFL. What matters is the system. What plagued Carr last year was his clash with McDaniels. It had nothing to do with the running game or the receivers or whatever else. Same as this year. Nothing to do with Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Alvin Kamara, whatever else. It has to do with this system and this scheme. That's it. Bottom line. That is the whole thing. People, whenever we get into the conversation, like, well, if they just had a really good running game, or if they just had better receivers, or if they had this or they had that, I'm telling you, way more to do with the system. Gardner Minshew in Indianapolis. That's a product of Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen is getting the most out of Gardner Minshew. Is he changed who Gardner Minshew is fundamentally as a quarterback? No. He just has him doing a certain thing in a certain system. That's it. Is he making Gardner Minshew an MVP level quarterback? No. Is Gardner Minshew all of a sudden a franchise quarterback? No. And that's okay. But Steichen is getting the most out of him. That's what a good coaching coordinator has to do.
You know, I think he's had enough opportunities. I mean, he had Devontae Adams last year, and Devontae had another huge year last
1,500
year.
yards.
Look what it did for the Raiders. Absolutely nothing
Exactly.
last year. So
that's what
I
I'm
don't
saying.
even know if that's the answer. They had a running back who led the league in rushing, and Josh Jacobs, and that didn't do anything for him. So I don't know what the answer is for the Saints.
Ladies and gentlemen, isn't it clear by now? Like, isn't it clear? And again, I know I'm ahead of the game. I know I'm so much further ahead of the mass media. It's unbelievable sometimes. But isn't it obvious that the answer to winning in the NFL, the answer to winning these games, the answer to being a good franchise isn't have the leading running back in the NFL. It's not have a 1,600-yard receiver. It's not any of that stuff. What it is having a system, being smart, doing the right things in the game script, within the game itself. Like she said, Devontae Adams has 1,600 yards last year. Josh Jacobs led the NFL in rushing. What did they do for the Raiders? Absolutely nothing. The Chiefs get rid of Tyreek Hill. Did they have any receivers with 1,500 yards? Did they have a running back that led the NFL? No. Look at the Tom Brady teams. And I know they have Patrick Mahomes. I know they have Tom Brady. But did Tom Brady have the NFL's best defense? Did he have the best running back in the NFL? Did he have a number one wide receiver every year? Like, you mix and match, and you take what you have and you put it into a system that works. You're smart, you're analytical, you handle the game script situations good, you develop players just like the Rams. They developed Puka Nacua, they developed Kyron Williams. They developed DeMarcus Robinson. That's what wins in today's NFL. That's what wins. It's not Madden. You don't have to go find a 99 wide receiver here and a 99 overall running back here and a 99 overall left tackle here. The algorithm to success isn't we have to have an A-plus offensive line and an A-plus running back and an A-plus defensive line. That's not it. She's answered her own questions. So it's nothing to do with getting Carr a better running game or a better wide receiver. It's fixing the bones of the franchise. It's fixing the structure that it's housed in. The whole thing. The Eagles, same thing. The success of the Eagles isn't because they went and got DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift's success is because of the scheme and the system of the Eagles. DeAndre Swift could have been Miles Sanders. It could have been Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It could have been Josh Jacobs. It could have been David Singletary. It could have been a million other running backs. It's fitting that player into the system, believing in the system. DeMarcus Robinson last night. DeMarcus Robinson could have been Rashid Shaheed. Could have been Kadarius Toney. Could have been whatever. Maybe not Kadarius Toney. But, it's all about playing. It's about, and this is about to be absolutely profound. It's about who's moving the pieces around the chessboard. It's not about the quality of the pieces.
Saints going forward, I do know that he's going to be on the roster next year, but you don't have to play him. So you probably need to go draft a quarterback and start trying to get him ready to play. If you can find one that you really like, that's not going to be one of those top 5 picks. So that's the problem, is the Saints are just not quite good enough to make the playoffs, but not quite bad enough to get high enough to draft one of those really
not right
good
now,
quarterbacks.
yeah.
So they're kind of in that middle of the road type hell that you don't want to be in, Mike. If you're going to not make the playoffs, like, you want to be bad. You want to have an opportunity, if you don't have a quarterback, to go get your quarterback, and that's not where the Saints are right now.
True-ish. In the NFL, or really in sports, you never just want to be average. You always want to be either really bad or really good, because like she said, if you're really bad, you get a high draft pick. The Saints, they don't have the personnel, they don't have the staff to deal with a high draft pick. They don't have who's in place. Do you want to give Caleb Williams, let's just pretend we have the first overall pick. Do you want to give Caleb Williams to Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael? No. So go get whoever first. That's step one. Get the new coaches in there. Get the new foundation. Get the new scheme. Get the new identity. You have to do that first. You cannot succeed unless you do that. Bottom line. The Saints cannot succeed until they do that. Once you do that, then you can start worrying about who your quarterback is, how you're going to find the quarterback, where you get the quarterback from. Is it through a trade? Is it through a draft? Is it through the first round? Is it through a middle round pick? Look at San Francisco. They found Brock Purdy, who'll be the MVP of the NFL. You think Brock Purdy would be the MVP of the NFL if he played on the Saints? I don't think so, right? So you don't always have to be in that top 5. With the right coach, maybe Bo Nix is the answer. With the right coach, maybe it's a Michael Penix. I don't know. They certainly will be available at the Saints pick. Do the Saints make a move? Do they trade up? Do they go get Daniels? I don't know. Depends on the coaches. Depends on the vision. Depends on who we get.
You might be advocating tanking there, but from a business standpoint, I don't know what it does from a football culture standpoint. Sean Payton is very, very adamant about that you don't want to introduce the concept of losing and accepting losing into a locker room.
Yeah, I don't think tanking exists, by the way.
Back.
Different video for different
You're not going to make the playoffs. It is better for your long-term interest to be in a position where you can draft a quarterback. And, Saints
obviously.
fans, after a game like last night, fire Dennis Allen. Well, the new coach is going to have his hands tied with Derek Carr.
Yeah.
With that $40 million, $30 million plus another 10 that becomes fully guaranteed. I want to say one more thing about Carr. Cam Newton caused a ruckus, I think it was last week, by labeling Tua and Dak and Brock Purdy and Jared Goff as game managers. I think your own.
Here's my take on that. The term game manager now means you orchestrate a system, which is, I don't think, a negative thing. I think back in the day, game managers were like the Trent Dilfers of the world, who the defense won or the running back won the game. The quarterback was just there to kind of, take the snap, take the handoff, call timeouts, do whatever. Nothing too crazy. That's not really what a game manager is anymore. I think Brock Purdy is a game manager. He's managing the system. He's managing the scheme. Like I said 10 minutes ago, the NFL is much more now. Put it like this. Think about 20 years ago. Think about the quarterbacks that were in the NFL. It was much more about go make a play. It was much more about what those quarterbacks were doing to impact the game. It was much more about what the players were doing to impact the game. It was much less about who's calling the plays, who's on the sidelines, who has the play sheet, who's in the booth. It was much less about the scheme and the system and the creativity and the pre-snap motion and all that stuff. What we're seeing, Miami's a good example. What we're seeing with Miami is, whether it's Raheem Mostert or A-Chain or Tua or Tyreek or Jalen Waddle or whoever, it's about Mike McDaniel, okay? They're running Mike McDaniel's system. San Francisco, it's much less about Brock Purdy or Jimmy Garoppolo or whoever. It's about Kyle Shanahan, his system, how they operate. That's the new NFL. So I do agree that they are kind of operating these systems, and they're not a playmaker type, Cam Newton type player that we used to see. That's just the shift of the NFL. That's just how it is. And that's probably okay. That's probably fine. I would be totally happy if we had Mike McDaniel's system and Tua was running it in New Orleans. I'll go ahead and tell you this. If Tua was in New Orleans, if he was playing for the Saints instead of Derek Carr, Tua would be terrible. They would have given him no help on the field. They would have given him no backup or development or any of that stuff. He would just be out there on his own doing nothing, struggling. And people would be saying how bad he is. It would look a lot like Bryce Young. You think Bryce Young would be better where he is right now or in Miami? The answer is Miami. He'd be way better. Would he be any different physically as a player? Probably not. But he'd be running a much better system. And that's what today's NFL is all about. Is the system you're in. The system and the scheme the team is running.
Only ever going to get the best out of Derek Carr if you make him a game manager. The guy who makes the basic meat and potato throws, has enough help around him. You're not asking him to go out and win the game. You're just asking him to hold it together. So it's going to work, and I think this may be why the Jets were interested. Great defense, great running game, just don't screw it up. That's the Derek Carr best case scenario. A great team, and you say to Derek Carr, don't screw it up. So maybe there is a team out there. I haven't really thought about it. Maybe there is a team that says, Yeah,
No.
this is a don't screw it up guy, but you're not going to pay that guy $40 million guaranteed. That's the reality.
That's the thing. That's the thing right there, is that there is a team, there is a system. Like I just said, Derek Carr would be fine in San Francisco. Derek Carr would be fine in Miami, right? They'd be fine in these systems. He'd probably be fine in Detroit. But yeah, you don't pay that guy $40 million because there's other people who can do it. You don't have to. Brock Purdy is the shining example. He is the future of the NFL. He is what we're about to see in the NFL with these genius coaches and these genius offensive, these creative offensive guys. He is the example. You get a guy who can do the task, and in the NFL, a whole lot of people should be able to do that. You get a guy who can do the task, who doesn't screw it up. If they can run the system, you're good to go. You don't need the Cam Newton thing where they have to dominate, they have to make a play, they have to be impactful. Those are going to be rare. Patrick Mahomes is an example right now of Patrick Mahomes is an absolute impact player. He is carrying the team by himself. He has no help. No help. He would be good on any other team. He'd be good anywhere else. You put Derek Carr on the Chiefs, Chiefs are way worse. Way worse. It's a scheme system league. This is the beginning of it. Well, we're a couple years in. This is we're probably like 4-ish years in to this, to where it's system based is what we're seeing. The Eagles are system based. That Jalen Hurts just runs that system. Jalen Hurts is a game manager. He runs that system. The tush push is the most system play I think I've ever seen in the NFL. Jalen Hurts can do it. All he's got to do is take the snap, do the thing, do the system, be the cog in the machine. If he can do that, boom. You think Joe Flacco could do the tush push? No. He wouldn't be asked to do the tush push. He wouldn't be in that system. You think Derek Carr could run that style of offense? You think Derek Carr could do what they do in Baltimore? No. They're different players, different system, different engines. It's just, we got to start thinking about the NFL, and we got to start thinking about offense. We got to start thinking about how the game is played differently.
He's not a guy that gets that kind of money. It's a Jimmy Garoppolo $25 million a year contract. So
yeah, exactly.
The Saints are stuck for another year. They're stuck.
Yeah.
They're just lather, rinse, repeat. Unless they're willing to pay him and not play him, Shireen, they're stuck with Derek Carr.
Yeah.
And what kind of backup is he going to be, Mike? I can't see him. We saw what happened at the end of the year with the Raiders. I can't see him sitting on the bench being a good teammate. If Jameis Winston is the starting quarterback or whoever it is, I just can't see that happening. So that's another problem is.
I don't know about that, but as far as the Saints are concerned, it's irrelevant. Because whether it's Winston or Carr, if it's Carmichael and Allen, it doesn't matter. So, that part doesn't really matter as much. But, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to end the video there. Long video. Let me know in the comments below what you thought. We covered a lot of stuff there. Really went deep, went long in this one. So, let me know in the comments below where you come down on all this stuff. I'll be replying. Thank you very much. We're getting close to Christmas, ladies and gentlemen. This video, I believe, is going to go out on Christmas Eve. So, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, enjoy it real quick. We're so far into this video. If you're watching at this point, my God, go down to the comments below. Let me know you made it to this deep. But it's been an incredible year for the channel. It's been an incredible year for me doing this, to see the engagement, to see the activities and the likes and the comments and just how we're growing. Just we can feel it. We're building something here. I say it all the time. We're the fastest growing channel in New Orleans sports media. I believe that. I believe it is true. I think what we're doing, no one else is replicating. No one else is duplicating. They can try, but we're the best channel running at the moment. And it would fall on deaf ears if it wasn't for each and every one of you. So thank you very much. I hope you have a fantastic Christmas. Enjoy your time with your friends, your family, or whatever you do. The greatest gift I have received is this community. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. I will see you in the next video.